Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad, this is my channel Animate Orange, and welcome to another ICONX build. Today we are going to build this wonderful model right here, this long awaited ICONX Star Wars model, the Imperial Star Destroyer. This is going to take a while. It's going to be a three-part build. Let's go to the table, let's open up the packaging on this thing, talk about it, look at the instructions, talk about the tools we're going to use, and start putting this thing together. Let us see what is inside the Imperial Star Destroyer ICONX model. Oh, they don't have the nice little tear thing on this one, huh? Wow. Oh, there it is. Well, no, it's just a line to cut it. I'm going to have to resort to scissors because this one's thick. I think they got wet at one point. Ta-da! Okay. It's the moment we've all been waiting for. But, ooh. Really close. Inside we have more than that. Ooh, interesting. It's one Metal Earth size sheet. And it has a very dull look to it. Kinda, I hate to say this, it kind of looks like a knockoff model. Because there are some, or copycats, or whatever you want to call them, there are some copy models that have a not so shiny look to it. And some Metal Earth for the longest time, everything had a very shiny look. But my understanding is this is an intentional paint job to give it a more realistic look. There's one metal sheet, there's one ICONX size, so this is gives you an idea of how big this is going to be. Not ginormous, but definitely bigger than the regular one. And I just had to grab it off the shelf because here is a Metal Earth version that I built. One of the first models that I built right here. This wobbly thing. And that is how much bigger it is. So it kind of gives you a little bit of an idea. Just had to do that. I'm very excited about this one. So we have this metal sheet. And yes, you can see it has some, I don't know if Aztecing is the right word. I know with Star Trek, with a lot of the Federation ships, they have detailing on them similar to this that is called Aztecing. But anyway, there's the other sheet. So a decent amount of parts, quite a lot of large parts. I don't really see any teeny tiny ones, so I'm okay with that. Some pretty small parts, a few teeny tiny ones, not too bad. Anyway, how many instructions do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 sheets of paper for the instructions. And I'm going to put most of this to the side because everything you need to know we can talk about pretty much using the one sheet that has the logos on it. I'm going to open this up, go over the instructions briefly for anyone who's not entirely familiar with what's going on here. So, make sure this is on the screen. It's mostly on the screen. I don't have to shift. Anyway, we have page 1, Star Wars logo, Metal Earth logo. We have a QR code. You scan that, and I haven't checked if it's up. I think it is. Now, I don't know if it's up yet or not. I don't think the 360 is up as of this recording, but possibly, maybe by the time you watch this video, it will be. You can go to this website or scan that QR code to see a 360 view of the completed model for reference sake, and that can be very handy. Line drawing of the model. We have some, like a key or legend here. We have a sample part with the notational slots, fold lines, and tabs. Tabs ultimately go into slots. That's how these things are held together. And fold lines are pre-scored areas where things are intended to be folded or curved. Down here we have the legend. E points at the engraved or colored side. And this doesn't say colored because there's not really much color in it. Non-engraved side. N is a non-engraved side, so you know which way to face the part. The hand is an attention point. That's not always in there, but if you see it, it's usually trying to tell you to line up something a certain way. Oftentimes a part or a tab needs to be here in this position, whatever it's showing on the page, or things won't come together. Blue circle and green triangle, they've been in these instructions since they started Blue circle means to insert a tab in its slot, fold it over 90 degrees. Green triangle means to insert a tab in its slot and twist it 90 degrees. We have some assembly tips. Pull when you're twisting tabs, it makes for a more secure connection. A bit about tools, we'll talk about tools here in a moment. Below that we have the start of the assembly steps. But a little bit out of order, if we go over to page 2, you can see the 3 different sheets are drawn. Some of the parts are colored. Let me just grab one of these here as a comparison to this sheet. You can see more or less that this is an outline of this sheet. It's got numbers all around it pointing at the parts, so you can find the part numbers. It's got a letter over here. This is sheet B. We also have a sheet C. The smaller sheet is sheet A. But these are there so you can easily find the parts. You'll also notice that some parts, but not all, are colored in. The parts that are colored in the same color are the same part. For instance, part 51 is this odd looking green shape here, maybe some sort of gun. You notice there's one here and there's one there. These are all part 51. I think they are probably guns. There's another one down here, and I don't see one up here, but you know, they might be spread out in different sheets depending on how many there are and how many you need. But that allows it allows you to find the part easier when it's duplicate parts. You usually have it colored over here in the flowchart, and it reduces the amount of numbers that are there, making it a little easier to find things overall. Now, going back to the assembly steps, we have step 1. ICONX tends to do steps rather than just a flowchart, but which really aren't a lot of differences. It's just sectioned off differently. Step 1, we start with part 1, which is on sheet B. Kind of see that over here. There it is, right there, 1B. You get that part, you fold it like this with a little bit of an angle. You've got part 2, which is also 1B. That attaches with folded down tabs here, and they are twisted. And then you go down to here, part 3, that's shaped like that, connects here. Part 4, shaped like that, connects over here. And part 5 connects under there. It kind of angles and connects underneath 1/2, and you end up with that. And that's the gist of the steps. Normally you'd go over here to page 2, but page 2 is all the metal sheets. But once you're done with that, you go to page 3 to step 2, and you'll see step 1 is referenced, and you just add in the extra parts. Step 3, follow the arrows, follow the assembly steps. Sometimes it'll call back previous steps and assemblies and adds to that. Page 4, you just keep going, and of course when you get through page 4, you find the next one in line. This is page 14, that's probably not it. This is page 10, this is page 5. So there you go, we found 5, we'd open this one up, we'd continue on. Then we probably go to this one which starts off with 10, and then we'll go to this one that has 14. And once you go through all the sheets, you're done with your model. Let's talk a little bit about tools. The very basics of what you're going to need is a pair of tweezers and some clippers. The tweezers, you can do a lot of bending, shaping, twisting of tabs, folding of things over. The clippers are going to help you get the pieces out of the sheets cleanly and easily by clipping them out instead of trying to bend them out, which can cause damage. I've also supplemented my set with some precision tweezers. I have a couple of pointed ones here. One, I ground the tip down just a little bit to give it a more sturdy tip for tabs and twisting things, and then I have a precision flat set, and between all of these I can do a lot of bending and shaping and twisting. I also strongly recommend some sort of pliers to complement your set. I have some flat nose here that have definite uses. I have some long needle nose pliers for some of the longer pieces, and then I have some curved tips for grabbing things at an angle and bending them over. For shaping a lot of curves and dome shapes and whatnot, you'll see me use an array of 3D printed tools that I've designed that you can find on my Etsy if you're interested. Otherwise, you'll also see me pull out a cheap drill bit set that I have that's not sharp for shaping cylinder shapes, or just look around your house and use objects that you find like dowel rods, pencils, maybe some beads to shape certain things. I have a sculpting set here that I occasionally use, and they have all kinds of different shaped ends on them. Some flat, some angled, some spoon. There's a couple of hooks. They're useful for reaching in and bending and pushing and pulling tabs and shaping parts from the inside. We've talked a little bit about tools. I've got my metal sheets here. I'm going to organize those in a second according to the lineup over here. As you can see, I've got the instructions, some basic tools to get me started. 3D printer over here working on something for Halloween. Let's start putting this thing together. I'm pretty sure I put the side pieces on correctly, but I can see how this could easily be put on upside down. Some of these parts, like 10, are thin and easy to warp when bending over the side tabs. I had to straighten this one out a little bit. I had trouble getting one of the tabs in on one side of part 9. I pulled it out to examine it and realized that the side was angled, but the angle was backwards from what it needed to be to fit. I looked and it turns out that part 13 fit perfectly. I believe part 9 and 13 were mixed up in the instructions, or mislabeled on the parts list. Also, you might want to fold over the tabs on 9 and 13, otherwise they will kind of get in the way of other tabs later. Here is another part that didn't want to bend properly. Remember, instead of part 13, I put part 9 here. It fits better, and I twisted these tabs, but it might be easier to fold them. They will sort of get in the way of another tab later if you don't. Now it's time to add these two side pieces into the larger section. A couple of pieces of advice. One, make sure you are orienting things correctly. Double check the pictures. It is quite possible to put things on backwards or upside down. Also, the rear tabs on either side of the open split section, I suggest bending them outward. I find out soon that bent inwards, they will get in the way of another part. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said to bend the tabs outwards. They prevent parts 16 and 17 from sitting flat. I ended up bending the tabs over the other way. And this is where the twisted tabs on part 9 and 13 got in the way. I ended up bending one of them over to move it so that I could twist the tabs on part 17. Unfortunately, these parts are so small that you can't really see them over my fingers. Part 21 and 22 connect together after folding over the sides, and the same for part 23 and 24. The instructions indicate to twist these tabs, but given how small an area there is underneath, I folded them over instead. And now to start making those iconic, no pun intended, domes that go over the bridge. Starting with this tiny little drum-shaped section, and then trying to shape the domes themselves. The domes don't seem to want to come together completely evenly. And do those steps a second time to make 2. Part 19 is one of the many thin parts that needs sides or tabs bent over and will easily warp. To try and keep from bending and out of shape, I used the flat nose pliers to hold parts I didn't want to bend while I bent over the parts that I did want to bend. I had to almost get creative with folding over the tiny side pieces on the tiny parts that stick out on each side of part 32. I used the precision tweezers to hold the part while I tried to fold the tabs over with my fingers. It was a bit of a struggle. I decided to take preventative measures and drop some 5-second fix on the tabs of the dome pieces to help keep them from becoming extra wobbly. I forgot to bend a bin in part 37 and tried to fit the assembly on top, but things didn't seem to fit. So I pulled it off and put the bin in part 37 and tried again. It was a struggle, and 37 ended up mostly straightening itself out. Anyway, I got the part together, but one side does seem to not want to sit right. I rather wish they would have added an extra tab or so to hold the face of this in place. Parts 39, 40, and 41 are all rectangular, almost the same size, and slightly different shades of green. I nearly went into a panic because I have trouble telling the difference between shades of color. I did notice that parts 38 and 42 had engraving on them to show what belongs there. This helped a lot, though for part 40, the engraving didn't really match. It was still enough to be fairly certain I was putting things in the right place, but That brings us to the end of part 1. Again, this is going to be a 3-part video. We built a good portion of the upper deck, so we've just gotten started on some of these side pieces here. There's still a lot to do just on the top alone. We got the bottom of the build, we've got the thrusters to build. We'll pick up with the rest of the top and move to the bottom in part 2, which is coming up very soon if it's not already out.